The first thing the cowboy noticed was the sound, not the hens, not the wind, but the soft, desperate crunch of a boot heel on frozen dirt, followed by a child's cough trying hard to stay quiet. He froze mid-step, hand resting on the fence rail, eyes narrowing toward the henhouse glowing faintly in the early dawn. Someone was there. Someone hungry enough to risk being shot. He didn't shout. He didn't reach for his rifle. He waited. The woman moved like a shadow, thin and careful, her dark hair pulled back with a strip of worn cloth. She lifted eggs from the nest with shaking hands, tucking them into the folds of her shawl. When she turned, their eyes met. Hers widened, not with guilt, but with fear so raw it stopped the cowboy's breath. "Don't run," he said quietly, though his voice still cut the cold air. "I won't hurt you." She didn't believe him. He could see that much. She backed away, one hand instinctively shielding her belly, the other gripping the eggs as if they were already her children. Behind her, half hidden by the trees, two small figures clung to each other, one boy, one girl, both barefoot despite the frost. The cowboy swallowed. "Come," he said after a moment, lowering his hands. "And bring your kids." The words surprised even him. Her name was Ayanna. She didn't tell him that at first. At first, she only followed him because the cold was winning and because the eggs would not last long enough to matter. The children walked close, eyes darting everywhere, expecting punishment, expecting cruelty. They had learned early that mercy was rare and usually came with a cost. The cowboy's name was Thomas Reed. He had come west after the war with a body still strong and a soul that felt permanently bent. He lived alone on a modest ranch, his wife and infant daughter buried 3 winters back under a cottonwood tree that leaned like it was listening. Since then, he had learned to live with quiet meals, quiet nights, quiet grief. He led them into the house, where warmth crept from the stove and the smell of coffee still lingered. The children flinched when the door closed behind them, and Ayanna stood stiff, ready to bolt. "Sit," Thomas said gently, pulling out chairs. "Please." She watched him as if reading a language she had nearly forgotten, kindness without demand. Slowly, she sat. The children followed, perching on the edge of their chairs like birds unsure if the branch would hold. Thomas cracked the eggs into a pan, added potatoes, a little salt. The sound of food cooking made the boy's eyes fill with tears. He tried to hide them. His sister didn't. She stared openly, mouth slightly parted, hope and disbelief wrestling on her face. As they ate, Ayanna spoke in fragments. Her husband had died the previous winter, taken by sickness that spread through the camp faster than help ever arrived. The tribe had moved on when food grew scarce. She stayed behind, her children too weak to travel far, hoping to find work, or charity, or anything. Most doors had closed. Some had never opened. "I didn't want to steal," she said quietly. "But my children." "I know," Thomas said. And he did. The days that followed changed the shape of all their lives. Thomas offered work, not as charity but as partnership. He needed help mending clothes, tending a small garden, keeping the house from falling into disrepair the way grief had led it. Ayanna accepted, pride flickering beneath exhaustion. The children helped too, gathering kindling, feeding chickens, no longer stealing eggs, but earning them. Trust grew slowly, like grass after fire. There were setbacks. The boy, Eli, woke screaming some nights, memories of hunger and men with guns chasing him through his sleep. The girl, Mara, refused to be alone in any room at first. Ayanna herself, startled at sudden movements, kept her back to walls, her eyes always searching for the moment kindness might turn sharp. And Thomas, he struggled too. There were moments he heard his wife's laugh in Ayanna's quiet hum, moments when Mara's small hand slipped into his and his chest tightened with guilt and longing. He feared loving again, feared the cruelty of fate that had already taken so much. Trouble came one afternoon in the form of 3 riders, dust-coated and sneering, men who knew Ayanna from the road. They accused her loudly, called her thief, demanded Thomas hand her over. The children hid behind him, shaking. "She's under my roof," Thomas said, standing firm. "That makes her my responsibility." The men laughed. One reached for his gun. Thomas didn't flinch. He didn't need to. The lawman from the nearby town had ridden up quietly behind them, having seen the dust. The men backed down, muttering threats that dissolved into nothing as they rode away. That night, Ayanna cried for the first time since her husband died, not from fear, but from relief. Winter deepened, but the house grew warmer than it had in years. Laughter returned, tentative at first, then fuller. Thomas taught the children to read. Ayanna taught Thomas words from her language, stories passed down like precious tools. They shared meals, shared silences, shared the slow rebuilding of something none of them had expected to find. Spring came soft and green. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ayanna stood beside Thomas at the fence, watching the children chase fireflies. "You didn't have to help us," she said. He nodded. "I know. Why did you?" Thomas thought of the morning he caught her stealing eggs. Of the fear in her eyes. Of the emptiness in his house before they arrived. "Because once," he said, "someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. And because I saw my family in yours." They stood there, not promising anything more than the moment, but the moment was enough. Years later, people would say the ranch changed after that winter. That it became a place known for open doors and second chances. They would say the cowboy who once lived alone learned that saving someone else can sometimes save you too. And it all began with a woman stealing eggs, not out of greed, but love, and a man who chose compassion over fear, and invited not just her, but her children, into a life rebuilt one kind decision at a time.